people make this big deal out of no self, like, they want to experience no self or something. But I like to point out that I think it's a really ordinary experience that everybody's having a lot of the time and just not noticing. Like in any ordinary day, a lot of the time, you're just driving the car or folding the laundry or washing the dishes or whatever you're doing. And there's no me there until all of a sudden a thought pops up like, I shouldn't have done this or something.
Right.
And then suddenly there's a me, or if you suddenly think, why did she do that to me or whatever?
Right.
and then all of a sudden there's them and there's you, and of course the body responds and you have an energetic felt sense of contraction. But a lot of the time there's no me there. I think for everybody, just in every ordinary day. So it's not like some big deal as far as I'm concerned.
Welcome to Letting Go and the Greatest Secret, where we explore the end of your suffering and the beginning of lasting happiness. I'm Hale Dwoskin, and today I'll be talking with Joan Tollifson. Joan Tollefson is a writer, teacher of non-duality with a devotion to both boundless presence and the beauty of the ordinary. Her background includes Buddhism, Advaita, and other forms of non-duality, meditation, contemplative inquiry, and awareness work. Joan is the author of 5 books. So before we talk about what your message is, can you tell us a little bit about the story of before the center disappeared, before the sense of a personal me disappeared, as much as you want to share, whatever you feel comfortable with.
The before story?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I never had some sort of dramatic awakening that I could pinpoint the day or something like that.
Sure.
My whole evolution has been much more gradual.
Sure.
Well, let's see. I grew up in the Chicago area, and I was drawn to spiritual. I was raised by atheist agnostics, but I was drawn to spirituality from early childhood, and was reading books about religion, and was really drawn to Buddhism. And then in college in the 60s, I took a course on Vedanta and Zen, and was introduced to Zazen, Zen sitting, which I did a little bit of. And then I sort of veered into alcoholism and extreme drug use. I wasn't really addicted to drugs, but I did every drug in the book and a lot of them. And so I lived a kind of wild life, and it's really a miracle that I survived it. And I sobered up in late 1973 with a very unusual therapist who didn't believe in the 12-step model, and so it was a whole different approach. She believed that she gave the power to the person, or really perhaps more accurately to awareness, and that she felt you had made an unconscious decision to destroy yourself or to be a drunk, and that you could consciously make a different decision, and all that. So anyway, then I got into political work, and I did a lot of different kinds of political work. Ended up in the radical anti-imperialist left, which I eventually left. And then I got into Zen finally, and I was involved at the San Francisco and Berkeley Zen Centers, and with Charlotte Joko Beck. And then I met Tony Packer, a former Zen teacher who left the tradition and the hierarchy and the dogma and the formality of Zen behind, to work in a more open way. She was very drawn to Krishnamurti's work also. And so she was supposed to take over the Rochester Zen Center, but she left and started her own place. And I got there a few years after that. And she's really my main teacher, although I've been with a lot of different teachers, Buddhist, Advaita, et cetera. Right. But anyway, so I was on staff there for 5 years. And it was there that I wrote my first book, Bare Bones Meditation. And I guess it was, if I had to say when the center fell away, And, in my experience, it comes back.
Right.
That is to say, I think of awakening as right now, not sometime in the past or sometime in the future.
Yes.
And, in any moment that I feel defensive or upset, there's a sense of the little me there in that moment.
Yes.
And that's what I mean when I say the center can reappear. But it was certainly with Tony Packer that I really, really saw that there's no self here, that,
Right.
it's just a bunch of thoughts and stories and mental images. And also with her that I really, although I think this had been true since childhood, but because I was always very tuned into the sensory world and everything, but she definitely taught in that kind of way. I mean, she was very much about just being present, being open and present, as opposed to a lot of dogma or anything like that. So theory
That's
or anything.
nice. Yeah.
So it really opened me in that way too, to the sort of, and then I got into Advaita teachers, like I was with John Klein and reading Nisargadatta and so on. And that's when I really, discovered that this presence is boundless and always here and never goes away. And that the little self, the little me appears and disappears in that. And so that's a kind of nutshell version of my.
Oh, well, thank you. That's beautiful. So, and when you work with people one-to-one or in small groups or the different ways you reach out to people, do you have like a core message? What is your core message?
My core message. Well, I think, what interests me is about kind of seeing through or waking up from the hypnotic entrancement in the map world, really the conceptual map world that we think is reality, and particularly from the sense of being an encapsulated separate self in a world of fragmented objects, trying to survive in that, and waking up to the wholeness. And that's what non-duality means to me, is just that there's no separation. There's diversity, but there's no separation. And everything belongs, everything is included. It's one whole happening. So
Yes.
waking up to that boundlessness, that seamless reality, and waking up to the fact that it's always right here, right now, that it's not something it's not something that we're going to attain in the future or anything like that. It's right here.
Yes. Yes.
So I think that's my central message. How I work with each individual completely differs, and people come to me for a variety of concerns and things they want to go into. So
Sure.
yeah.
What type of things do people come to you with?
Oh, a range of things. I mean, some people want to look into sort of the psychological problems of life, addiction or despair, depression, that kind of thing. Some people are more philosophically inclined. They want to understand the philosophy of non-duality or Advaita or something. Or some people are trying to have an awakening and want to see if I can help them have an awakening. And so there's a broad range of things that people come with.
Yeah, sounds like it. It sounds similar to the work that we do here. Has, on one level, it's just pure self-help, especially to the broader audience. And then as people start to apparently have a better life, then many of them are interested in a more and more pure non-dual message. And in our retreats and some of our other courses, that's the main focus. It's not about fixing the story. It's about recognizing that the story is just that. And there is no you. So
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's certainly a place for doing that kind of self-help work. I mean, I certainly needed it, or I'd be
Right, right,
dead by now.
right.
Um, yeah, so I don't really see them like two of my main teachers, Tony Packer and Joko Beck. I think were kind of innovative in that they integrated a lot of that psychological work into the spiritual work because they didn't really see it as separate. As Joko used to say, that's what gets in the way of the fact that we are naturally always already awake. The only thing that gets in the way of that is the sort of imaginary psychological muddles and so on that we get into.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, Lester Levinson, my mentor, used to say, first you see the world, or first you see the story or the world as a dream, and then you see it as a dream that never really was. Do you resonate with that quote? And what does that bring up inside of you when you hear that?
Well, I certainly resonate that the world is dreamlike and, can be compared to a dream because the more you look into it, it doesn't really have any substance or
Yes.
nothing really forms in any persisting way. And in that sense, you can say that nothing really happened. Like in a dream, when you wake up from a dream, you might have been on this whole adventure
Right.
by a tiger or something, but when you wake up, it's like it didn't really happen. I mean, it happened as a dream. It was real as a dream, but the event didn't really happen.
Right.
And yeah, so it's like the whole way that this appears, the more you look into it, is a kind of ephemeral, evaporating construction, that doesn't really hold up. So
Not at all.
yeah. So yeah.
That's great. And so do you have specific things that you do with people who are interested in recognizing that underlying truth or that underlying reality?
Yeah, I have some, things that I often invite people to do or to explore. Um, um, I mean, I think one of the main things I encourage people to do is just to really kind of tune into or open up to the sensory non-conceptual actuality of here and now.
Yes.
Just because the sort of conceptual map that we overlay on top of it is so ubiquitous and so taken for granted that we don't even realize that we're in a map. So it's like, like the body, for example, is just a concept there. When you really pay attention to the actuality of the body by sensing it, you don't find. And so that's something I encourage people to do is just, pay attention to the body, and you notice that there really is no body.
Right.
I mean, there's just a bunch of vibrations and tinglings, and there are places where you don't sense anything, and then other places where it's kind of dense. And if you put your attention on the place where the body meets the chair, you can't really find a place in that sensation where your body ends and the chair begins.
Yes.
And I mean, I often encourage people to just see, like, close your eyes and see if you can find the place where inside turns into outside. And, you discover that you can't really find it. I mean, you can think of a place or picture it, but when you actually tune in, you can't find a boundary there. And
right.
So, I encourage that kind of thing. And then also I one of the things I often encourage people to do is to really watch the whole unfolding of choices and decisions, because that's one of the main ways that we kind of have the idea that there's me here. I
Right.
am the one thinking my thoughts, making my choices, making my decisions, living my life
Yes.
and observing it, and all of that. And so if you just really give attention to how choices and decisions actually happen, and it can be the big ones like whether to buy a house or get married, or it can be the little ones like whether to stand up after you've been sitting down for a while. And when you really watch, you begin to see that there's no me there. There's just these conflicting thoughts like that pop up by themselves, like you should buy the house because blah, blah, blah. No, you shouldn't because blah, blah, blah. Yes, you
Right.
should. And then eventually you're moving in one direction or the other. You're either buying the house or you're not buying the house. And you can't make that decisive moment happen any sooner than it does. You know, you
Yes.
can think, okay, I'm going to flip a coin. And then the next thing you know, you're thinking, I think I'll flip another coin.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you can't make that decision happen any sooner than it just does, and you can't even capture how that happens. Like all of a sudden it's just happening.
Yes.
And even if you do something that seems very deliberate, like visualizations or positive thinking, or that kind of thing, which um, I play around with sometimes. But if you really watch, again, you can't find anyone doing that. It's like the whole universe is doing that.
Yes.
It's like, how did that interest come to you? How did what in the moment that you decided to do it? Um, you begin to see that it's all appearing kind of by itself,
Yes.
and that's really relieving because um, it takes away the guilt and the blame, and the whole idea that we have to, get revenge for
Right.
other people are doing things that they shouldn't have
Right.
done,
Right. Right.
and gives you a lot of compassion for people that are doing things like that you think are horrible.
Right.
That you realize that they can't do anything else in that moment than what they're
Right.
doing.
Right.
Yeah, so
Exactly. And there is no personal doer, even when it appears there's one. Would you
right.
agree with that?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think people make this big deal out of no self, like they want to experience no self or something. But I like to point out that I think it's a really ordinary experience that everybody's having a lot of the time and just not noticing. Like in any ordinary day, you're just a lot of the time you're just driving the car or folding the laundry, or you know washing the dishes or whatever you're doing, and there's no me there until all of a sudden a thought pops up like um, I shouldn't have done this or something.
Right. 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 Right.
And then suddenly there's a me, and or if you suddenly think, why did she do that to me or whatever.
Right.
and and then all of a sudden there's them and there's you, and of course the body responds and you have an energetic felt sense of contraction, and but a lot of the time there's no me there, and I think for everybody, just in
Yes.
every ordinary day.
Yes.
So it's not like some big deal, like you're gonna, as far as I'm concerned, as I
Yes.
see
Yes.
it, it's very ordinary. It's just recognizing that, and recognizing what that me is, like really beginning to see how it sort of comes about, like how it's not there. And then all of a sudden you have a thought like, how am I doing? And then all of a sudden there
Right.
seems to be me.
Right. 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 Yeah.
Uh, yeah. But there's no me there, even when you have that thought. It's just a thought.
Yes. 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 Yeah. I remember a quote from Francis Lucille, who's also a devotee of um, Jean Klein, or has also studied with Jean Klein. Uh, he said to me in the early 90s, how much power does a thought have? None. I mean, it does well, actually, it was more specific than that. He said, how much does the thought I have any power?
Uh-huh.
And you look at that and obviously it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just another thought.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I did a retreat with, I went on a retreat with Francis years ago, and he's wonderful.
He is. He's
Yeah,
adorable.
lovely man.
He is a welcoming man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've known him since the early 90s.
Uh-huh.
I never really studied with him, but I know him. He's a wonderful guy.
Yeah, I went on one retreat with him, and Rupert was there on the retreat. Rupert wasn't teaching yet at that point, and
Yes.
that's where I met Rupert. Yeah.
Right. Rupert's adorable too. We had a lot of fun in our conversations.
He's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and his wife is wonderful too.
Yeah. Oh, I love Ellen. I listened to that conversation you did with Ellen because I love her.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I shared it on my Facebook page.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sure she thanks you too. She wanted to. She was very happy to be interviewed. Usually, Rupert gets all the attention. So here's a conundrum, and I just want to get your take on it. There's all this push and pull around free will and predetermination. Is there such a thing as either?
No. I mean, that's the thing, again, those are just maps. They're conceptual maps. They're ways in which we think about reality. And it seems to me that you're going to use a different one depending on the circumstances. Like my therapist that I sobered up with, she used the model of choice, and it worked really well. And then Tony Packer was very much into noticing how there isn't really a chooser. And that was really liberating. If you're training an athlete for the Olympics, you're going to use the model of choice. You're not going to say,
oh yeah, it's already happened. Don't even worry about it.
Although you might, like if you think of that book, Zen and the Art of Archery, which I haven't read in decades, so maybe I don't remember it correctly, but it seemed like they were kind of training in that way in that. But
yes.
But yeah, so I think they're just different maps. And they, obviously we have the sense of making choices. And I think when some people really sort of see the absence of the chooser or the absence of individual free will, because that's what it really is. It's like, like no wave can act independently of the ocean. And we are this whole happening. We can't act independently of it. So it's like when people sometimes get that, but they take it on as kind of an idea, and then they get into these sort of muddles, like that they shouldn't be making choices,
right,
or they shouldn't have preferences, or like, and I give the example, if your kid is running out into the street, you're not just going to sit there and think whatever's destined to happen will happen.
No, you're not.
And you're leaving yourself out of the picture when you do that, because it's like your response, your stop, wait, running after them is the whole universe waving in that way, moving in that way.
Yes.
It's not a choice really when you look at it. It's like it just happens.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that, it's very easy to get, we have these ways of sort of pointing to different aspects of reality and understanding it. And then it's really easy to get sort of stuck on them, fixated on them. And that's one thing I really always have appreciated about Zen, is that it kind of won't land anywhere. It's like you can't say it is, you can't say it isn't.
Or you can, the best you can do, you can say it is and it isn't.
Yeah.
which almost is a koan.
Yeah. Basically anything we say is not really right. Because you can't, this, whatever this is right here, right now, this living reality, whatever this is, you can't put it into words or into concepts. It's like, so we have these words and they can be helpful pointers like consciousness and awareness and everything, but there really is no consciousness or awareness. Just like there's no table, there's no you, there's no me, there's no Hale, there's no Joan. Those are just thought concept ideas that we've sort of overlaid on top of what's actually a very fluid, ever-changing reality that never actually even forms. to anything persisting.
Right.
You know, they say there's great line in Buddhism. I think it comes from Nagarjuna, but you know, about the true understanding of impermanence is that there is no impermanence, because the flux is so thoroughgoing that no thing ever actually forms or persists to be impermanent.
Yes.
So, you know, the kind of one understanding of impermanence is that there are all these things and they're all impermanent. And that makes us feel very worried and sad.
Right.
But,
We contract. Yeah.
yeah. But when you really get that the things themselves aren't really there in the way they kind of seem to be if you don't look too closely.
Right.
Then it's very freeing, because there's no death, there's no birth, there's no, you know, it's just, I mean, of course, there's the experience of losing a loved one when they die. And it's not to deny that, but you know, if you really look into it, it's just this ocean that's always waving and flowing, and there's you can't separate the waves from the ocean.
Right. Well, and there's no you to do it anyway.
Right.
Which is, to me, is really good news.
Yeah. I mean, it would be really, really awful if like, you know, the universe was really depending on me to keep going.
Right.
But that's how we feel sometimes.
Oh, a lot of the time. Yes. It is a good thing that it's not up to an individual, especially since there isn't one. So,
Yeah.
And I think you talk about this, isn't what we're experiencing already enlightenment, or already freedom, however it's appearing?
Yes. I mean, it that to me is the most liberating message, you know, to really get that this is it. It's, you know, it's never absent. You can't gain it. You can't lose it. You are it. There's only it. There's just this. And this includes a lot of things. I mean, you know, they're not really things, but it includes being a drunk. It includes being depressed. It includes those things that we think of as not being enlightened. You know, it includes the whole. And I can't say that being a drunk was, I mean, I feel like it was an important part of my path.
Yes.
And not that I'd recommend it to anyone.
Right.
But
there might be some liability issues.
Yeah. But seriously, I mean, I feel like it was an important part of my path, and I learned a lot from it.
Yes.
And so I mean, you know, it's true that like I often give the example of, like, if you think of Hitler and Buddha, you know, two sort of classic examples of what we think of as enlightenment and delusion.
Yes.
If you think of them as waves in the ocean, you know, you could say that they're both equally waves, they're both equally water, they're both equally movements of the ocean. But Buddha understands that, he sees that, whereas Hitler is under the illusion that the waves are separate and that he is a separate, independent wave with free choice and volition, and he's got to destroy some of the other waves that are, you know, screwing things up. And purify the ocean. And so, you know, there, in that sense, we can sort of distinguish between what we might call enlightenment and delusion. But whatever this is, this whole happening, it includes Hitler, it includes Buddha, it includes the whole thing. And we can't really pull it apart. You know, we mentally, we pull it apart and we think, well, this was bad and this is good. But it doesn't really work that way. You know, it's like it all goes together somehow, and you can't pull it apart.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no leverage point because there's nothing that's separate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there isn't anything outside of this.
Yeah, so the mind hates that because the mind's all about separation.
Yeah.
But even that is not separate.
No, I mean, even, I mean, the mind is like, the thinking mind is like doing its job, which is to make sure that I'm safe and figure out what's good and what's, good for the body and bad for the body and
Yes,
good for my survival. And it's doing its little job and it's part of this whole functioning. And
yes.
even when it gets, obviously with human beings, the thinking mind does a lot of things that are not really that helpful, like, you know, trying to figure out the nature of the universe and that kind of thing. But even when it's doing that, that's also just the universe doing that. It's this whole
Yeah,
happening showing up as that.
yes.
And then, as we were saying earlier, even that is, it's like an event in a dream. It's kind of it's you can't even, when you start to look into it, like anything, what is that? It's just a thought maybe. And what is a thought if you look at it? It's just some sort of little burst of energy that
You're right.
boom.
Right.
So
Yeah. It appears, it has its moment in the sunshine, so to speak, and then it's
yeah,
gone.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, you said that you also do help people with things like addiction or other self-help type challenges. What are there any pointers you have there for people?
Well, I don't really, I mean, I don't put myself out there as someone who would help people on psychological, I'm not a therapist. And
Right.
so that's not what I just meant that sometimes people have those questions,
Oh, of course.
you
Of
know,
course. How do I deal with this? Right.
right. But, well, in terms of and, I think there's a place for all kinds of things. I mean, there's a place for psychotherapy, there's a place for somatic work, there's a place for things like the work of Byron Katie or the Sedona method, or, there's a place for all kinds of things to address those issues. And, um, and then, what I can offer is the possibility of just being aware of what's going on, just bringing those issues into awareness, so to speak. Like, in other words, for example, if you're trying to stop an addiction, um, like just really paying attention to the whole thing as it happens. Like, instead of sort of trying to stop, really, like, say you're trying to stop drinking, notice what happens, what's going on when you suddenly have the thought, I'd like a drink, you know, and how does that feel in the body? And just take a moment to feel that in the body, just to feel the urge and to feel what's going on, not to think about it, but to just really feel it. And then, and notice what thoughts are coming up, like, I need a drink, I deserve one, I can just have one, um, I shouldn't, no, it'll be okay, no, I shouldn't, just sort of seeing the whole
Yes,
thing.
yes.
And then if you decide that you are going to have or if life decides that you are going to have the drink, um, just feel what that's like, going to wherever you have to go to get the bottle and picking it out and opening it and pouring it, and what does all that feel like again in the body, just, and again the thoughts, noticing the thoughts, and then what's it like, that first sip, what does it really feel like, and how does it feel, how do you feel after that first drink, and what makes you go for the second drink, and do you really like how you feel after the second drink, how do you feel, what makes you go for the, just sort of really watching and giving attention to the whole thing. And the same would be true of something like depression, like, or anxiety or anything, just to really feel it in the body, and also see the thoughts that are kind of generating it and keeping it going, and um, and also just tune into what else is going on, like just hear the birds and the traffic sounds and you know the vacuum cleaner down the hall, and
Right.
just sort of open up to what's actually happening. And or before you light the cigarette or take the drink, just see if you can take a minute, just a minute maybe, just to be with the urge itself and just completely feel the urge and just feel, what is that urge? And, it's kind of like in meditation when you just have to sit there through all these different things, like you suddenly get an itch.
Right.
And, the impulse is to scratch the itch. But if you're just sitting there, you notice that eventually it goes away. Mm-hmm. The same thing happens if you're, if you pause before lighting up the cigarette or something, and you feel that tremendous urge, like you've got to do this. And then if you wait long enough, it goes away. It may come back.
Right.
But it goes away. And so I would work with it in that way. And also just by trying to really help people to see that all of this is part of the whole happening, that, and that there's no one in there sort of, that it's not like you're a smoker because you're a bad person and you're choosing, I would emphasize that this is some sort of habitual pattern that, has arisen for 10 million reasons. And there's no one to blame for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, when we blame ourselves, it tends to make things stickier.
Yeah, and that's like with addiction. I mean, one of the things you notice with addiction is that it in the beginning, at some point, you notice that the addiction is causing you harm.
Yes.
And then you have a conflict between the part of you that wants to smoke and the part of you that wants to stop. And my therapist that I sobered up with, she did these Gestalt things. She was into different forms of therapy, and one of them was Gestalt. And she did this great thing where I had to literally move between two chairs. And one chair was the voice that wanted to smoke, and the other chair was the voice that wanted to stop, And so I'd sit in one chair and say, you should stop smoking. You're spending a fortune on it. You're going to get lung cancer. It's unhealthy. And then I'd sit in the other chair and I'd say, oh, quit being so serious. Lighten up, light up. You love to smoke. Just do it. And,
right.
and, when you do that, you realize that they both represent sort of a part of you that's important in some way.
Yes.
Like the part that wants to smoke, there's something kind of good about that part. It's like the rebellious wild child or something. And
right.
So then it's like, well, are there other ways for that to come out? Maybe there's another way
right.
for that kind of energy to manifest other than smoking and drinking.
Yes.
And so those are some of the things that come to mind anyway.
Oh no, that was all very helpful. A lot of that is what we call welcoming.
Welcoming, yeah.
Or allowing.
Yeah.
That ocean welcomes all as it is.
Yeah, that's like awareness is like accepts everything.
Yes.
It's like unconditional love, just accepts everything.
Yes.
And when we're it's often said resistance, when you resist something, it persists. Resistance, well, it gives the thing power and importance and sets you up in opposition to it and sustains the illusion that there's you versus this thing.
Right.
And if you tune in instead to what's actually there, instead of just the word label smoking, when you start to pay attention to the urge and then the action and everything, it's a whole, it's not just a thing, smoking. It's all kinds of sensations and movements and thoughts and,
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. And seeing it that way, it fades back into the ocean. It loses its meaning and importance and significance.
Yeah. We have a lot of ideas about how we should be.
Right.
And of course, how
very long list.
And how everyone else should be too.
Yes, absolutely.
And how the leaders of our country should be, and how
yes.
The world should be.
Good luck to all of us for ever fulfilling any of our lists.
Yeah. Uh, this shouldn't be happening.
Oh, but it is.
Yeah.
At least apparently it is. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
that's
Oh.
great. Yeah, those are all very good pointers. Both the ones you gave earlier about noticing the just the presence of the awareness and or recognizing that the boundaries are illusory because you can't actually find them. Those
Mhm.
all those are very relaxing and opening to explore.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I like to really point out is just that there's this incredible diversity and variety here that's ever changing, and and at the same time it never departs from right here right now. It's
Yes,
like this presentness or this presence is always here. It's ever present. It's this here nowness, and yet the movie is nothing but continuous change. And it's sort of like these two dimensions are, they're not really two dimensions, but they're both here right at the same time,
yes,
and and there's all this diversity, and at the same time it's all showing up as one seamless picture, one whole picture.
yes, yes,
So, and you can really see that, you can really notice that, you can really feel that.
yes,
And
absolutely.
yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So, uh, I think we covered a lot. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I can't think of anything, no. But you have a wonderful light in you, and that's one of the things I said to you in my email that you didn't get.
Oh, oh, thanks.
So I'll say it to you now.
Oh, that's very sweet. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you do. Mm.
Yeah, well, this is a 2-year-old way to express it, but for some reason it came up, so I'm going to use it. Takes one to know one.
Oh,
But I see
and
that same light in everyone.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that light is just shining out of everyone and everything, really.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Joan Tollefson. You can learn more about Joan at joantollifson.com. That's JoanTollifson.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe so you can have immediate access to future episodes. Please give us a 5-star rating and share it with the people you care about. If you'd like to learn more about my work, my mentor Lesta Levenson's work, and the Sedona method, please visit www.sedona.com. As you explore our site, you learn the key to lasting happiness, success, peace, and emotional well-being. We have books, courses, events, and plenty of free material to explore. Again, go to sedona.com. That's SEDONA.com. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Letting Go and the Greatest Secret.